Hello, this is Brian Seward. We're back in the shop again today for video number 2 of our carburetor series on how the KA-100 carburetor works. We are going to get deeper into details as we go, but I figured today is a good time to just understand what is going on with the carburetor, how does it function, how does fuel get from your fuel hose through the carburetor and out these nozzles and into your engine, metered by these high and low speed needles. So I think in order to, or once everybody understands a little more how that works, the things we're going to talk about later on will make a lot more sense. So I'll take this carburetor apart and we'll start looking at some of the individual components and we'll start explaining what they do. And so everybody will get a better understanding of how this carburetor actually functions. Okay, I've got all the screws out of this carburetor so I can take apart the different sections and kind of show you how each of them work and talk through it as I go. So the engine actually interacts with the carburetor in two different ways. One is the obvious one. When the throttle blade is open, the piston going up and down is pulling the air through this carburetor, and that action, that pulling of the air through there actually draws fuel out of those nozzles. The low speed circuit there, you can see that nozzle hanging down right there. That is tied into your low speed needle. And the high speed holes, which are here up in the front, those are tied into your high speed mixture screw as well. So we have that action going on, but then we also have, what is kind of important to start with, is this hole right here actually gets pulse from the crankcase. So as that piston goes up and down in your combustion cycle, in the crankcase, it causes a pulse of pressure. And the carburetor uses that pulse of pressure to operate this top section of the carburetor, which is just the fuel pump. And so that fuel pump, which is operated by this pumper skin right here via that pulse, or that pulse hole that comes up all the way through here into this body underneath this channel here, and that activates this part of the pumper diaphragm that makes this top part actually pump fuel, and it will pull fuel from your hose through this cap, down through this screen, and then it pumps that fuel down this side here through this hole, which goes down, as you can see. That same hole passes down through here, and then it gets to the bottom and it turns and it comes back up underneath this needle and seat here. So when you see people talk about pop-off, what pop-off pressure is actually doing is it is limiting the amount of fuel that can come into the fuel well here. And the pumper is supplying pressure and fuel volume into this channel at all times when the engine is running. So the only thing actually pumping up and down in the carburetor as it runs is the fuel pump itself. So that will wear over time. You hear people talk about doing a carb kit. And sometimes if that gets really stretched out and weak, then it's not pumping the fuel or the fuel volume that it needs to. The fuel goes from the pumper side down through here. As I've been told by a friend of mine who tapped into this many years ago, Mike Marion, a friend of mine, he tapped into a running engine and put a vacuum or pressure sensor right there. And he said he was getting between 3 and 4 PSI of pressure as the engine is running. So that's the fuel pump supplying that 3 to 4 PSI of pressure. Some experts out there might know better what that number is, but either way, it's supplying a pressure up underneath here. So when your throttle blade is open and air is being pulled through there, it is pulling fuel. So what makes a Tillotson style carburetor different than a bowl style carburetor? A bowl style carburetor, you would have basically a bowl of fuel that as the carburetor needs or pulls more fuel into the engine, it draws from that empty or that bowl, and then it gets refilled by a float going up and down. So you have a little different mechanism going on here, whereas all the fuel is trapped under this diaphragm. So when that is in that position, this is vented to the outside. So as air gets pulled through there and it tries to pull fuel in there through these different passages, it actually kind of creates a little bit of a negative pressure inside there, and it pulls this diaphragm down. And as it pulls that diaphragm down, as you can see I'm pushing there with my thumb, or my finger, that pushes right down on this fulcrum arm. And that fulcrum arm raises up that needle and allows more fuel in there. So what this is trying to do is balance out that pressure in here, or that negative pressure in here, to keep fuel supplied at all times for when the engine is drawing through there. So basically the fuel, yes, so the fuel comes through there, it comes up through the needle, and it is metered by this via the diaphragm, and then it comes over and it goes into these passages where your low speed mixture screw is and your high speed mixture screw. So this is all full of fuel. As fuel is pulled through these nozzles, it is pulled down through these channels. For your low speed, it comes down through here. There's a hole there that goes through the needle and then comes out that nozzle right there. So you can imagine as you adjust the taper on this needle in and out, it allows more or less fuel to go through there. And the same thing with the high-speed circuit. It is pulling fuel through this hole, past the needle, down into these channels right here, out into the engine. Okay, so I'll just throw this back together for now, and we'll go through one last time kind of exactly what is going on here, and then we can wrap this video up. So basically we have the pulsing of the piston going up and down, creating a pulse through here, operating this fuel pump. And this upper fuel pump pulls fuel from your fuel tank into the engine, and then down through this passage here, up under this needle and seat. And then as more fuel is required, it will actually pull this diaphragm down and allow more fuel into this well underneath here. So essentially, as the engine is running, this needle is always off of the seat, because if not, there would be no fuel flowing through the carburetor. And then that is, after the fuel is pulled in here and metered by this, it goes through these nozzles, or through this needle, and out this nozzle for the low speed circuit, and out these two holes for the high speed circuit. So that's the basics of how this all is kind of laid out and how everything functions. In the next few videos, we'll get into a little more detail on each of these little things and how they affect performance. We'll talk a little bit about pop-off and how that affects things. Obviously, we'll talk about your needle positions and the high-speed circuit versus a low-speed circuit. But that's a good place to start, with everybody kind of understanding how this carburetor functions, so we can dig deeper the next time. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.